We all set?
Just one more minute. All right, Michelle, we were all set. Lisa, can you unmute so we can hear you?
There's another dog. Hi, Lisa.
She's still muted.
How's that?
Okay, very good. And Bob Jackowitz, can you unmute as well so we can hear you?
Can you hear me?
All right, very good. Thank you very much. You're going to stay off video?
Yeah, unless you want me on video.
No,
Either
I
way.
mean, okay. Michelle,
All
it's
right.
up to you.
Okay, we're all set?
All right, we are ready to go. So
Okay, great.
you just call me if you need me.
Thank you. I'll start with the open meeting of the Design Review Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transition of the COVID-19 virus, the town of Northborough has been advised and directed by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a public accessible physical location. All members of the Design Review Committee are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order allows the members of the Design Review Committee to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the post agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of this meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link listed on the agenda. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation, such as participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. Confirming members' access. I'll go through the list and make sure that all the members of the board are here. And if you are, can you affirm that you're participating? So Tom.
Present.
And then Lisa.
Present.
And then Diane.
Present.
And then I'm present, and we are waiting for Dave to run. Okay. So I think that covers everything for the meeting guidelines. I will invite each speaker or applicant on the agenda by name and make a presentation and speak for their application. Participants will provide their full name and hold until their name is called. Each speaker will be asked to mute their phone or computer when speaking and to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. Those responding will be asked to wait until the floor is yielded by the chair. Speakers who wish to respond to the comments of others do so through the chair, taking care to identify themselves. Each vote taken by the board or committee will be conducted by roll call. All right, so I think we are all set at this point. And then if we have any people that we see come on for public comments, we can open up that too as well. So we'll start with our first applicant tonight. And I think we only have one applicant, which is Mr. Shea, who's working on the Southwest 50 Southwest Cutoff project. So Tim, would you like to begin? Or James, whomever would be presenting for you.
This is James. I'd like to begin. Kathy, you were going to see if you could let me share stuff from my screen for the presentation.
I actually, I think if I just hit
share screen, but I'm not sure. Let me, hey, John, are you there? Because what I did, Tim, John, how do James Tatro, the engineer, wants to share the screen? Can I do that, or do you have to do that?
Oh, he needs to do that. Is your document open, James, on your computer?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
And
so-
now I see share screen just popped up.
Yes, and if you click on that, you should be able to pick your document that you want to share. As long as it's open.
Yep. Okay, I'm trying to do that now. Let's see. Can you see?
Yeah. Yep. Very good.
Yep.
Terrific. So to the committee members, at the last committee meeting, we presented an initial version of the plan, got some feedback from you, and I want to just describe what we've done in response to that feedback. What you see in front of you is a revised landscaping plan, and I'll just go through some of the simplest points first. If you can see my cursor down near the south end of the frontage in Route 20, I'm bringing it over. There's a little orange circle here by the entrance. That's a proposed pole light. Over at the back, the west end of the property, where you see the cursor circling, there's another little orange circle marking a proposed pole light. There's 4 proposed pole lights on the property. Now I'm over by a little landscape peninsula off the smaller building. Again, another pole light. And behind the 7,000 square foot building, I'm circling the cursor again by another little orange circle marking the 4th pole light. These are the light locations. They weren't shown previously except on the very hard to read lighting photometric plans. I apologize about that lack of clarity before. In addition to these lights, there are going to be wall pack lights over each door, front and back. But these would be the only pole lights on the property. So again, one by the entrance for lighting for folks coming in and out, one at the back, one sort of between the buildings but shedding some light on the back of the larger one, and one behind the smaller one. The other thing I want to point out on this plan that was added, I'm sorry it doesn't show up a little better, where I've got the cursor circling. There are 4 proposed dumpsters in the area directly behind the larger building, one for each potential tenant space. And I'm going up behind the other building now. There's 2 off, I guess you'd say, the back left corner, and 2 more dumpsters off the back right corner. So that was something for clarity that we hadn't shown on the previous plan. One of the other pieces of feedback was, that a desire to shift landscaping away from in front of each of these buildings. So now you see we've just got a couple of cap U's proposed by each door. And that's the same on both buildings, I'm circling now over the 9,600 square foot building and going over to the...
Could
Yep.
you zoom in, please?
Sorry?
Can you zoom in so we can see more of like detail of the
okay.
plan?
Yeah,
He's
I
on.
can.
Okay.
Is that a
You
little
can have
better?
him.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know
Okay,
if the
I
other
did-
committee members want to see more detail, but
Oh, sorry. I was a little too caught up in trying to show the whole site. Sorry.
well, I mean, that's important as well. So but if you're going to get into the landscaping, I think it's helpful.
No, you good point. So again, the feedback from Dave and the other members had been that there was probably extra landscaping in front of each possible tenant space that probably wasn't the best use of it. So again, we just have, where you see the cursor now, a couple of cap U's, one on each side of each door, both on this building, the 9,600 square feet, and by each door on this building, the 7,000 square feet. And The other primary directive that we understood from, well, there were sort of two. I guess I'll backtrack just a little bit. One was that the committee members asked us to take a look again in regard to the existing trees and what could be saved and used as vegetative buffer. Down by the south end of the frontage here where I've got the cursor, there's a large existing 30-inch oak that there's not much grading happening in that area. And I think this oak, and it's also in very good condition, is going to stay without a particular problem. The other area where there are some existing trees, a little north of this, where I've got the cursor now, I don't think those are going to be able to stay. There's an area here that's just north of one of the overhead wire lines into the site, and there are some trees that are actually right about at the limit of the right-of-way. But the grading in the Southwest Cutoff Route 20 right-of-way necessary to bring that slope to be a 3-to-1 slope, something that can be managed long-term as a lawn, is such that it's probably going to do some real damage to the roots of the trees that are in this area where I've got the cursor. And a couple of those trees weren't in great shape anyway, and a couple others really didn't have, weren't so great for lower branches. And so in some, there's 6 or 8 trees here, and we did look at them again, and unfortunately, I don't think we can really make use of those, and we're going to plan on cutting those trees. I think the bigger message we got from the committee members at the last meeting was to beef up the landscaping off of Southwest Cutoff off of Route 20. And so what you see here is that we more than doubled the number of shrubs on site from 102 proposed to 206. We increased the proposed tree plantings from 23 to 32, and we also increased the lower ground cover, the perennials. And from most of this area of frontage along Southwest Cutoff, you're going to have, we propose 3 layers of vegetation between Route 20, between a driver driving by and looking in perhaps, and any of these buildings or parking. For instance, pick a spot in the middle here. You've got gold flame spirea, butterfly bush, and a lilac, all proposed here, 3-foot height, and 2 that be 6 or more. And that's pretty much what you see all throughout here, with a couple little small gaps, but is 3 layers of vegetation proposed. And just to put this in context, too, if you're look where I've got the cursor now, that is a natural grade of about 360, just for some context. And the top of grade here at the curb edge is going to be about 366 and a half. So the driver's eye, if somebody's sitting in their car, the driver's, obviously some people have the giant SUV, but the average driver's eye is going to be, he's sitting on 360, so it's going to be about 363 and a half. And the curb, just the curb here is at 366 and a half. And that 366 grade is going to go almost to the right of way. So all these plantings that we're proposing right here, the 3 layers deep, the gold flame spirea, the butterfly bush, and the lilac, those are all sitting on 366. And when they're mature, the gold flame spirea is going to be, the top of it's going to be at 369. It's going to be 5.5 feet above the eye of the driver right here. So that's going to be some pretty good visual buffer, and obviously it takes time for everything to become mature. It's not instantaneous, but even as things start, when things are first planted, because this ground is at 366, even when things are just planted and a couple feet high and just getting going, at 366, a couple feet is 368, and that's 4 and change feet above the eye of the driver coming by in the car here. So we think with the depth of vegetation we're proposing there, and just the context of where the driver's eye is going by, that this is going to be some pretty good visual buffer for this site to not all be seen by everybody going by on Route 20. Let's see if there's anything else I really wanted to touch on. At some point here, I'm going to turn it over to, I will go to one of the building plans and turn it over to Tim, but I guess that's the thing I most wanted to touch on. I'll certainly answer any questions. Just again, briefly, the site has no drainage now. We're collecting everything on site and sending it to through a CDS unit for filtering, and then for infiltration here. And this area is sized such that you're only going to get outflow in the 10-year storm. So, you know, this big rain we had a couple of days ago, an inch and change, you would have no piped outflow at this structure in that storm. So that's one aspect that's proposed. And again, over here, where I'm circling the cursor now, is a septic system leaching area. I don't know what they have on site. We actually aren't quite sure where it is, and we've dug at a few places on site. We were wary, excuse me, at any point that we might encounter who knows, a cesspool or leaching pits or something. But we will have a drainage system and a septic system which meet the present regulations on site. And as I say, we're going to have a very significant, you know, for most of this area, 3 layers deep vegetative landscape buffer between the site and traffic on Route 20. And I guess I should just make one more quick point. If you look at this, where I've got the cursor right now, sort of circling slowly, from that curb, we've tried to everywhere leave about 6 feet off the curb to be realistic that there's going to be some snow storage there. The real intention for snow storage is over to the side for if they're, you know, big amounts, if necessary, is over to the side of the 7,000 square foot building. And in this area here to the north of it, those are the best spots. We wouldn't really want them to pile it on the septic system. And the nature of just the grades, this is uphill this way, is I sort of picture snow being pushed to this north side here and over here. But we'd also have some space, like I say, at least 6 feet all along this where snow can be piled off to the side, because that's, you know, what is kind of naturally going to, I think, the guys who want to do. And we did not, like I say, we are proposing a lot of regrading in the Route 20 right-of-way, but we're not proposing new plantings there, just lawn. And that also lets them do what they're going to do, which is, you know, obviously in the snow storage in Route 20 is going to take up the first several feet anyways. So anyways, just to backtrack, that's what we, I think, have tried to do to address the questions that came up at the last meeting. But the other significant question was in regard to the buildings, and I'm going to invite Nick Muskoff to step in. I'm going to click over to. Is everybody seeing a green building of 2 shades?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit, and I'm going to step out of the way and let Nick explain.
Can you go to your other drawing, Jane?
Okay. The 50 by 140?
Yeah.
Okay.
So per the last meeting, we were asked to change the color of the buildings. I didn't like the white with the green trim. We suggested to go with green. So we did that. We added a band along the top, and we also added a band right above the windows. We were kind of toying around with the idea with along the doors and windows to probably either keep that the lighter color green or go with the darker green as a contrast across the front, and also the right side elevation that faces Route 20 on the smaller building. And then on the the larger building, just do the bands along the front, nothing on the sides and the back. That's pretty much it.
Hey, Nick, how tall is this building going to be?
At the peak, 20 feet.
So basically on the grades that we're talking, we're going to add another 20 feet of height from the road we're looking up. Correct?
To the peak, yeah.
Okay.
So I guess we would turn it over to the committee members and ask if there's any questions we could try and answer, or any additional information we could try and provide, or get your comments. So we'd like to try and make any necessary revisions and hopefully address any comments or additional information you're looking for, and have everything kind of buttoned up, as soon as we reasonably can.
James, may I add one thing? Tim Shea here. We got a letter of support from the Del Greco family. I don't know if Kathy has a copy of that she's shared with the board.
I sent it to the Zoning Board of Appeals, actually, Tim. They're the permit granting authority board.
I didn't know if it would have any bearing with your board, with the design review as well. Obviously, they couldn't be a closer abutter because I own the building on the other side. So I just thought it was, something they should at least be aware of if they don't have a copy of the letter, that they were happy with the buffer we're providing, and really they have no problem with the entire project. I just wanted it to be on record. Thank you.
And if I could just piggyback on Tim's comments, I had forgotten that point. I think it was Lisa wrote a letter, and one of the items discussed was that there's normally to be provided a 50-foot buffer between an industrial use and a residential district property. And in this instance, that it's a little off, but where I'm running the cursor is the zone line between Business West to the north and Residence C to the south. So this property to the south, Del Greco, is in the Residence C zoning district. The issue is that the property has frontage all along Route 20, where there's a fairly significant upgrade to a peak of the road that's probably just about where I'm circling the cursor. And the effect of that is that if we put this driveway further north, for instance, say around here, that peak of the road would greatly restrict the sight distance looking south towards Lexington, and would make a left turn extremely difficult, if not considered to be unsafe. And for that reason, we have the entrance to the site. We close the two entrances that now exist, and leave one entrance here at the south end. And again, unfortunately, that's next to the Del Greco property. We've already run this by, made the initial filing with Mass DOT, and Mass DOT did not have any problem with this layout. In fact, agreed with it as a choice. What Tim brings up is that the abutter to this side, the Del Grecos, are saying that they personally don't have any problem with what is proposed. I know that doesn't change the nature of whether something is in the bylaw as requiring normally the provision of a buffer between industrial and residential use. But I guess we hope it would make the ZBA more amenable to seeing that it's a safety requirement to have the entrance over here in this case, and the abutter who is that nearest person who's not getting the 50-foot buffer strip is not objecting.
Okay. So thank you, James. I think what we should do is probably, since you started with the landscape, start with the landscape, and then we can move over to the building. And I noticed that Dave Veron has joined us as well. So if we can start with either Dave Veron and then go through the committee members on the landscaping, and then we can get feedback to the applicant about the landscaping plan that they proposed to us tonight. Dave, do you want to start?
Sure.
You have to come on. Okay, good. You're good.
All right, basically on the landscape plan, I thank you for kind of listening to us and what we had to say last week. In looking at this, when we design, usually we come with tall, medium, small. Kind of what I see here is kind of small and medium. You got some large in here, but not a lot. The quantity, yeah, you added more, but I think you kind of have to go back to the drawing board. Possibly, I don't know if you have a landscape architect or a good designer that you work with. I would recommend bringing him into this because a lot of stuff kind of just in here. And it needs to be done with a lot of thought into this because, again, and I understand what you're doing. You have to block, but you also have the height of these buildings that we're really trying to block. And I understand the 6 feet that we were talking about that you did here, but you also have an extra 20 feet on these buildings. And this is kind of the entrance into Northborough coming from this way after Wegmans and whatnot. It has to be done in a way that kind of, hey, you're coming in, and Tim, you've done a good job on all your other buildings here. You got to do more on this, and more is not more plans. It just has to be done with a lot of thought and development into the landscape plan. And I think needs to go back to a drawing board and be done again with, someone who has some really good knowledge of this.
Would you like to spec anything? Is there something you're looking for that's a secret?
There's no secret. It's just, there's just a lot of there. It's just a lot of stuff just kind of thrown in here. It's just like, again, I'm going to go to Walt Disney World. When we had to sit there and work around it and basically hide the exhibits of what we had to do at Walt Disney World, you wanted to do it and do it with a lot of class. And basically people were walking by and had no idea what was on the other side of what was going on here. And you're not Walt Disney World here, but you need to kind of have a feel of, hey, some class on the side of the road here and whatever's on the other side. This is just a lot of stuff thrown in. We're using a lot of, you got cap U's, you got some just kind of stuff that's okay. Nothing that's wow. Your other buildings look fantastic. They look very good. This is just a lot of stuff that, is just kind of put in here, and, you have some existing trees that are very nice. It just kind of has to flow, and it's just not flowing. That's why I think you really need some help with this.
James, could I ask a couple questions?
Sure.
I'm looking at the grading plan. So that indicates that there's 4 to 6 feet of material being removed from the top of this site.
But I guess it depends on where you are. But
all right, if the 9,600 square foot building, it's going down from 374 to the finished floor of 368. So that's a 6 foot cut.
Yep.
And at the 77,000 square foot building, it's going from 370 down to 366.
Correct.
And your curb height at the middle of the site, you said was 366.5?
It depends where you are. If you go to the very north end, you're at more around 364.
All right. So between the buildings.
And if you're right in front of the larger building, you're at 368 and change.
Okay. And so from that curb cut along the drive, you're going down to 360. So you got a 6 foot drop in what, 10, 15 feet?
Yes, yeah, this is just set up to be able to get a 3-to-1 grade in the Route 20 right of way, to be able to have a nice, easily maintainable grass surface.
So most of those planting you're showing are on a slope.
No, actually,
Well, that's not what your grading plan is showing. G3.
I'm looking at
Is
it.
that
I have it
accurate?
right on the floor. I have it on the floor beside me. If you look on the grading plan, if you look at the areas where there are the 3-to-1 slopes, those are entirely within the Route 20 right of way. And if you look at the plan on the screen, all the Route 20 right of way is delimited by the dark blue, the thick blue line. All of those plantings are on the west side, on the individual property side of the right of way line. So what this would, and I leaving aside just for the moment Dave's suggested changes, what this would say is that you would have these plantings on a relative plateau off the curb.
Okay.
And then once you get past them, you'd have basically a 3-to-1 grade drop down to the curb of Route 20.
So that drop is from the blue line going right.
Correct. And there's an area where it's not too much of a drop, almost beside the 7,000 square foot building, but it is pretty much shown as a 3-to-1 slope grading down from that blue line to the Route 20 curb.
Okay. You've showed us the location of these pole lights.
Yeah.
Are they reflected in the photometrics that was submitted?
Yes, these are the locations shown on that photometric plan. Unfortunately, it was a very interesting plan, very hard to. We were scanning it from our machine here, which makes a gigantic PDF out of it. If you try to do it as color, we tried to scan it as grayscale, and unfortunately, it just makes the locations of the pole incredibly hard to find. So I apologize for that lack of clarity on that, but these are the locations that were the basis for the photometric results.
Okay. Was wondering if we could relocate the 4 dumpsters on the northern property to be behind the building, a 7,000 square foot building, to the left side or the west end of that building.
I guess I would not want to do that, because that would make them relatively inaccessible to the tenants in there. They'd have to walk 150 or 200 feet more to get to it.
Well, you put them next to the building, they're going to be shorter distance.
Well, I thought you were saying let me move the cursor on the screen. I thought you were saying to move.
Go to the other dumpsters on the north.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood. So you're wanting to put these right next to the building?
Well, on the west end of the 7,000 square foot building.
Oh, okay. So here.
So they'd be out of view.
The problem with that spot is it'd be tough, I think, for a truck to get in and access them. I understand but these are going to be screened with shadow box fence around them. They're not going to be just sitting out in the open on on pavement or on a concrete pad.
Okay.
So I'd really like to have it at like sort of where they are, where it's a location that even a bad truck driver can get to it and do his business.
Okay.
So I guess I'd like to not move them, and I'd like to say that I think, especially like the one over here, is going to be so far. Again, you're sort of on a plateau here. behind this building, and then a drop down, and you'd have some screening here. This one really is going to be effectively invisible from the street, and from anybody coming in over here, it's quite a ways away. If you wanted to look for additional screening on the one where I'm moving the cursor now, that might be a good point to diminish any visibility of that one. So we could definitely do that.
So while we're on the issue of visibility, in the bylaw, it says yards abutting a public street, no lumber, building material, or equipment can be visible from the southwest cutoff. What happens if you want to park your materials behind a 7,000 square foot building? Because if it's a contractor's yard, we expect there'll be things on the exterior.
Possibly. I think Tim and Nick's experience on a similar use in Sterling is that many of the users don't have anything but use the interior space and have a truck outside. Is that right, Nick?
Correct.
Well, the bylaws expressly do not permit the storage of materials or vehicles, abandoned vehicles, lumber, or equipment in view of the public right-of-way there, public street. So I would recommend if two buildings are built, they be configured in such a way that this doesn't become an issue for the town.
Well, there's probably even one more thing that they could do in that regard, which would, besides just vegetative buffer here, you could put in fencing, such that again, where I'm running the cursor now.
Yep.
Such that it covers, I don't know what the exact distance is here, this 40 or 50 foot stretch, and entirely blocks any view, completely blocks it of what's back here, such that if a user in, say, this tenant space, the most westerly, had a pallet of I don't know what, something back here, that it would be completely blocked from view.
Okay.
That might be one way to try and.
Well, it's going to be Disney North too, James.
Well, maybe not.
So Jim, also there is a maximum front setback of 25 feet. Are you asking for an exemption from that requirement?
I don't think that's the correct number.
All right.
Because we had a zoning, on the zoning compliance table, I don't have that sheet highlighted here. We looked at the min and max. And in fact, I think both of our buildings achieve that. I don't know if I can, I don't know what happens if I jump to another sheets here.
Oh, this is Business West, right?
Yes.
Well, maybe my table's wrong, but mine says maximum front setback is 25 feet. Is that, maybe Kathy could enlighten us. Is that accurate, Kathy?
I'm just double checking right now.
Page 754. Oh, go back there, James.
No,
I thought you had a table on your cover sheet.
Yeah, I was trying to get it and I accidentally shifted to the next sheet.
So the front back is 15. Yeah, the front, the 15, 20 for the side and 25 for the rear.
How about the maximum?
I thought it was a maximum 75. Did I minimum 15, maximum 75?
In the business east, there's a maximum.
Oh, okay.
In the business east and the downtown business, but in the business west, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It is 75. I'm looking at it at an angle. It is a maximum setback, front setback of 75.
Okay, I think we just stayed under that with the positioning of the two buildings.
So Tom, do you see that on the table?
My table may be out of date. Mine says 25, maybe it's a typo. Maximum maximum front setback was 25. So they possibly changed it?
It, well, the version that I'm using is from, includes last year's town meeting.
Okay,
I think I don't remember when it was, when
Okay.
maximum front setback was added, but again, for the business east and for business west, it's 75.
all right.
And the way this is set up is that the 7,000 square foot building is 49 and change feet off the right of way, and the larger building, the 9,600, is 74 and change, just under that. What we thought, and I think is
Okay.
The maximum.
So even though we aren't discussing the ZBA issues, they do allow one building by right, two by special permit. So that's one of the things you're going for. And you're also have a use that is no longer permitted in this zone, but you're using the grandfathered clause.
That's
Use.
correct, Tom. And we, in light of the feedback we got from the committee's first meeting and are getting again here, what we understood is that the request to build two buildings is in some ways more consistent with the committee's desire to have less visibility, less conspicuousness of these buildings, because the applicant's alternative, essentially, if was not allowed to do, to break this up into two buildings, would be to do this as one single larger one, and that's just going to be hard. It would be harder to, to buffer either with vegetation or anything else from view of Route 20.
So there's a 2-year limit for a grandfathered use once a business goes discontinues. So do we know what that date was when Del Greco's builder's yard was no longer functioning? I know Fred died in 2018, 2019? And do we know when Del Greco ceased functioning?
They were selling stock prior to us acquiring the site. So
Right up to you're purchasing it, Rose?
pretty much, because we told them we have no use for any of that. We were hoping to not revitalize Del Greco's because we thought we could work with the boards to get something else off the ground. And so we encouraged them to sell things right up till the day of the closing, which they did.
And when was that, Tim?
I think it's been
June 2019?
something like that.
Okay, so you have till June of 2021. And after that point, the grandfathered use is no longer in effect?
I'll have to defer to my attorney.
Yeah, because I think we need to know that date. Because,
Can you see on the screen? I've got the deed.
yeah,
So this might be the operative date, the 11th of September, 2019.
okay. So the lumberyard is permitted until September, the end of August of 2000, or the 10th of September, 2021. Because one of the things we have to weigh is that the fact that this zone does not allow contractors' yards if this were new construction.
We thought it was design review night.
I'm just making a point to the board. We're not deciding it ourselves, but it factors into our estimation of the appropriateness of the buildings and this landscaping.
Sure. You know, Tom, in the biggest of big pictures, I think the applicant's argument to each of the boards is that what he proposes will be a significant upgrade to the site. It is not necessarily everything that that any particular board or committee member wants on the property, but the applicant has developed and earned an excellent reputation for upkeep of his sites and keeping them in good condition and keeping a pleasant appearance. And he would do so here again, and this would be a significant improvement over the property that's there now.
Okay, so we did have this discussion on our first meeting. It's sort of carrying over to our second meeting as well. And I think because the zoning enforcement officers made a determination about this, our committee's job is to just move forward as if this is, we're preparing the ZBA to make a decision, right? Do we have any other feedback? I know we've gotten feedback from Tom, feedback from Dave on the landscaping. How about Lisa and Diana? What is your feedback?
I'm still concerned about the 50-foot buffer that's by the driveway. The Del Grecos won't always be there, and
Lisa, it's hard for us to hear you.
I said I'm still concerned about the 50-foot buffer at the driveway. And I feel that even though the Del Grecos don't mind, they're not going to be there forever. And some other people are going to come in. And it's just such a shoehorn situation. I know you guys have done a lot of work and I appreciate it. And I know that Tim does take care of his properties and appreciate that. But this is such a, it's just, we try to make bylaws so that we can have the town to start changing their appearance. And this is, an industrial look that no matter what we do to try to hide it, maybe it would be better to have just one building and not two, and have it, face the street like they used to and what the bylaw says. And I think we need to put a little bit more buffering in between the two lands, because at that 50 feet, it doesn't look like there's much. It looks like, what is it, a 6-foot buffer that you've put in? I can't, yeah, there you go. And,
Right.
and if there are white pines there, I have white pines next to my house, next to the bank, and they die very quickly. We need whatever we get, we have to put in perpetuity. I imagine design review does that. I don't know. Michelle, you could probably weigh in on that. But I just feel it's, no matter how hard you try, it would be a much better idea to go back, put one building in, and make it so that it's an attractive building, so that when you drive by, I just think an industrial use here is that's a problem for me, but I know I'm on design review. So
Could I just ask a quick question? I apologize for interrupting. One of 5 kids. This is what I do when I talk. I interrupt people, so I apologize. But you sort of mentioned 2 different issues there, and I just wonder if they could be separated. One is of one building versus 2, and another is of the type of use. I guess what I don't see is that why one building is preferable to 2, again, with an eye towards the issues of, conspicuousness and leaving aside the issue of what is the proposed use.
yes, I'm trying to leave that aside.
Yep.
And leaving that aside, I would rather see one building that's centered on the property, that gives you a little bit more room to do your buffering, and more areas that people can move around and conduct their rental when they get in there. And right now, everything is so tightly put in, and it may be an improvement over broken buildings and such that's there, but the way it looks right now for me is not that great an improvement, I'm sorry to say.
If I could just make one other, I don't want to seem repetitive, but if anyone who uses this site is going to bring a driveway in here at the south end of this frontage, because that's easily the best spot for sight distance looking to the south towards Lexington to be able to make a left turn. So no matter what is done here, even if it was a use that is completely in the Business West and is completely complying with the Business West zoning, that use would want to bring their traffic out in this same location next to the Del Greco property. That's the use of this area next to the Del Greco property isn't created by what the applicant wants to do with these two buildings. It's created by the fact of you're going to have to let people come in and off the road and give them some room before you ask them to necessarily ask them to make a turn, especially if they have a larger vehicle, which a lot of the other possible uses here could still require some trucks. So it's not the use that the applicant is proposing, which is taking away 50 feet. It's the fact of where the road has to come out, where the driveway has to come out.
So James, you're saying for safety purposes and sight distance, the way the engineering was done along that strip along Route 20, that regardless of whether it's two buildings or one, that driveway has to be there because it has the best sight distance along that whole strip of the frontage for this parcel of land, right?
That's exactly it, Michelle.
And then what you're saying is because this is a safety sight distance issue, what you're saying is in order for traffic to come in and out of the property, whether it's, emergency vehicles, large trucks or whatever, that there's not going to be enough space to create a 50-foot buffer from the Del Greco property to this property. Is that correct?
That's correct. And just on the Del Greco property, where I've got the cursor right now, you see this little sort of scalloped line?
Yeah.
That's the existing tree line. And if you go to the back of the Del Greco property where I'm moving the cursor, there's already, tree and vegetative buffer. This is where I've got the cursor now. This is open between the two parcels. And the need to have the driveway come out here is, no matter what use is made of this property, is going to always leave some of this open. You're always going to need to do some planting, but you're not going to be able to have 50 feet of space to do it, to buffer any use on this property from the Del Greco property. Now, the applicant could, I guess, could certainly propose a solid fence along here in addition to planting to create a better visual and, a visual buffer between the uses. That's one thing that comes to mind, and maybe that would help assuage some of the desire to have compliance with that provision.
So Jim,
So
every
I
time
just wanted to.
someone exits the property, they're going to wash this Del Greco with their headlights at night.
They could.
So maybe a fence would be more appropriate than the trees.
Maybe both. And maybe we would put the trees on the Del Greco side and let them see vegetation, and put the fence on this side. That might
possible.
be
So I just wanted the board to understand that as we go back and discuss this, the more buffer, that it's not doable for this property because for safety purposes, they need to have the driveway there for sight distance, for entering and exiting their property. And there's just not enough land there to make that buffer that, we would like to have. So I think, whether we regard, I think if we decide on one building, two buildings, that whole area that, James and Lisa are having a dialogue about at the corner there is just not doable to have the additional landscape, and we have to be a little more creative. And so the creativity that we've come up with as a plan is let's do some trees on the Del Greco side and a fence. And that means, as Lisa indicated, whoever the property owners on the coming forward, if it should move out of the Del Greco's hands, they at least have a nice buffer between that property and the current property that's being proposed.
Well, I certainly would support keeping 2 buildings to reduce the mass, because as James pointed out, if you had to put these 2 back to back, the additional height would be pretty dramatic. And a single building, if it's made with the same metal building system, would be even more of an eyesore. So 2 smaller ugly buildings are better than 1 huge ugly building, in my opinion.
Damning with faint praise.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So if we could, at this point, Diane, did you have any comments that you wanted to state about the landscaping?
Not about the landscaping. Mine's about the building.
Okay, so at this point in time, if we could just segue over to the building, and you originally had those, I don't really see, I'm looking right now at still, okay, there. So if we could start the discussion regarding the building now so that the applicant can get some feedback on that.
So I agree with Tom that 2 buildings are better than 1, because this already looks so long. And I know that you've added some dark green, not trim really, but you've added some darker green on the elevation, which has broken it up a little bit vertically, but you really need to break it up horizontally. I mean, it's just sort of relentless. And I recognize what the building use is. And I recognize that you can't see a lot from the street, but it's still going to be sort of this overpowering mass up there as you drive by. And I think breaking it up horizontally in some way, you've added a horizontal. I think you need something that breaks it. Yes, thank you. Just to help, there's a major issue of scale here, which is why I'm really opposed to the single building idea. So, and I don't know that 2 vertical lines are going to do that trick, or 3. I think that's something you guys have to look at a little bit more. But I think because, this use is being questioned by another board a little bit, I think you have to make more of an effort to give it some architectural character than what you've done so far. And I think you can do that with like a whole array of industrial building materials. There's a large palette available to you to do so at the in the same cost arena.
And Diana, possibly the focus would be on the 2 elevations facing southwest cutoff, and maybe the sides and the rears could remain your standard steel building.
Agreed.
But as they currently stand, I just don't find them acceptable for this location. There's just.
So we want to have invisible buildings, but once we get inside
come on.
Once we get inside the parking area, they should look amazing.
So there are award-winning buildings that are industrial, and I'm not asking you to aspire to that, but given the location, I think this warrants another look at those front elevations. And the one that, especially the shorter one, like it looks to me like that upper chunk. I mean, what is that? Like what is that signaling architecturally? It's just a green rectangle on the side of the building. It looks odd to me.
Well, Priggen Steel they don't have a designer on staff. They're just selling a product. It's off-the-shelf components. That's what makes them affordable. But in this location, maybe that design approach is not appropriate.
Or you have somebody else construct those facades. I mean, structurally, they can put it together. They can use, they could put up the other sides, and you could have something that's, I don't know, that blends well with that. I think it can still be metal, even. Just depends on how it's detailed and what it looks like. But yes, Tom, I get your point that it is a prefab building, and it is what it is to a point. But there's a lot you can do with a prefab building if you want to.
I have a question, Bob. Do you remember what were the materials they used for that soccer building up off of Bartlett Street? Was that a metal building?
I don't know if that was a metal building or not.
I think it was
My memory is
mostly,
not that good.
but they had, I think the entry facade had like a stamped concrete or a, you know,
Yeah.
something like that. And it didn't even extend across the entire elevation as I remember it. But again, it was, you know, it broke up the scale. It sort of.
What was that location again? That
That's 400 Cedar Hill Street.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, it's not constructed yet, but I have the plans here that I can, you know, share with whoever.
Does it say what kind of panels those are on the front?
On the soccer building?
Mm-hmm.
That I don't recall, Diana.
Now, there's a company in Massachusetts, MBCI, that has a variety of metal panel wall systems that are available. That gives you a larger palette to use to address these elevations. I just think that further study needs to be done.
Okay, and feedback from Dave. I mean, we've heard from our two architects, so they've given extensive feedback. How about yourself, Dave?
You pretty much heard my landscape. I do agree with the building. It's needs some work as well, but the landscape needs a lot of work.
And then Lisa? Lisa, you have to come unmute and a little closer.
I said, I believe, I think there are different facades that can be used, and I think there's a lot more out there to be picked up from. So I agree with the rest of the group. I think I'd like to see him go back to the drawing board, come back with something a little bit more creative. It's not an industrial area. It shouldn't look it.
Okay, so Tim and Nick and James, I know that the board has given you, at least our two architects and our have come back and asked to go back and break up the scale of the building, break up the frontage, make it look a little more appealing, and then given some other suggestions, as well as feedback from Lisa and Dave. And then you've received also extensive feedback from Dave on the landscaping and the other committee members as well. When do you go before the ZBA again?
They're
October
scheduled
27th.
October what?
27th, I believe.
October 27th. And are they continuing the hearing, or, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to figure out your timeline.
It was
That's-
continued to that date.
Yeah, that's the first time that it will be heard by the ZBA is on the 27th.
Okay. Well, it's not uncommon for whether it's the ZBA or the planning board, it would probably then, you'd have to tell them you're working with the design review committee, and then it would be continued to another hearing. But I'm wondering, do you have any feedback for the board or any more questions for the board, or is this ample enough information for you to go back and present something in another couple weeks back to the board again?
Just speaking for me I think that's enough information for us to try and work forward from here to refine things.
Okay, because we we understand that this board is not, it's not under the purview of this board to decide the use, but they are looking at, you know, the exterior of the building and the landscaping. So I think you got a lot of feedback on landscaping. I think we just need to work on the building and how it's looking. And so hopefully that's enough feedback for you to figure out how to come back and present something different to the board. I think the consensus of the board is to have 2 buildings versus 1. Lisa, are you still proposing 1? Because the other 3 members thought 2 was better.
Yeah, I don't like 2. I don't like them because it doesn't look, there's just no flow to it. It's just one stuck one way and one stuck another way. But I realize that we're not always gonna be voting unanimously. I just don't like the 2 buildings.
Okay.
It's not gonna be that tall because they have to be able to use them in their fashion unless they're gonna have elevators. So that's my opinion.
So the feedback on the building, whether it's 1 or 2, you've heard from the board, seems the majority is favoring 2 versus 1. Obviously, work on the facade and the front of the building, especially, not necessarily the back of the building. Personally, myself, I do not like the green color, but I know we asked you to change it to a green color, so I'd be okay with the white, but if the majority of the board wants to go with green, that's fine. I don't know if there's any other feedback we can give you for you to hopefully come back with something in a couple of weeks that we can work with again.
Okay, I would ask, Michelle, I would ask if the committee would please continue this to their next meeting. And if we get to a point approaching that and we haven't made enough progress to address the refinements you request, we will ask for we'll send in a notice asking for a further continuance from that.
Kathy, when are we meeting with the consultant regarding the regulations for the multifamily? Is that in October or November?
No, that's scheduled for November 5th at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
So your consultant is available at 6 o'clock. So if you were to do this on the 5th, you would have to do it after your discussion on the 2-family guidelines, or schedule another meeting.
Okay. So we're on the 15th right now. I don't know how quickly you can come back with something. Our next scheduled meeting is on the 5th, and we're going to spend quite a bit of time talking about the duplexes and the guidelines for the duplex. So if it's 6, I'm sure it might go to 7, at least 7:30. I don't know if that's too late for you and you want to try to present like between 7:30 and 8. Or would you like to do another meeting separate?
Michelle, I know as far as what I know, as far as the licenses that are available, I know November 10th is, if you wanted to do another meeting, just for 50 Southwest Cutoff. Tuesday, November 10th, there's a Zoom license available. I think there's also a license available on October 29th.
Mm-hmm. Well,
that's what I
I'm
can tell
inclined to make a recommendation for October 29th. They've already said they're meeting with the ZBA the beginning of that week. I think otherwise we'd be asking the applicant to wait an entire month before seeing us again. It's up to really the applicant. And then do other board members, are they free on the 29th?
I'm free.
Yeah, I'm available. 29th.
Dave Veron, are you free on the 29th?
Checking, hang on. Looking.
And Lisa?
Yep, I am.
Okay. So Tim and James and Nick, what are your thoughts about, do you think if you could come back in 2 weeks after meeting with the ZBA and the feedback, we could work on it again on the 29th versus waiting all the way to the 10th for you? What's your thoughts on that?
I think so, sure.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. So at least that moves you along, and you will have been gone. You will have made your presentation before the ZBA and gotten the feedback on, your use. And so that's their job. We'll let them decide that. And then based on that and that feedback, we can move forward and continue to work on fine tuning this landscaping with the feedback you've received tonight, as well as, working on the building with some of the feedback you received tonight from the architects as well. How does that sound?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Thank you,
Kathy,
folks.
why don't we schedule, do you want it 6 PM or 7 PM on the 29th?
I mean, 6 works for me, but it's up to you as board members.
6 is better.
6, yep.
Yep. So let's reschedule this meeting to 6 PM on the 29th.
Okay,
All right. All right. So thank you. And at this point, I think our John Sabatini is going to help exit you out of the meeting. You can certainly stay and listen to what we're going to discuss next, but we'll end this meeting with regards to the applicant for 50 Southwest Cutoff. And we'll stay on as a board to talk about some old new business in the preparation for our next meeting on November 5th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gotta get up.
Okay. So I
Dave's
think,
dog.
yeah.
Not my dogs.
All right. So I think we're back here. And so now we're going to go on to the next item on the agenda, which is we have a couple of things to discuss. First is old new business, which one of the things that were outstanding, Kathy, is we're talking about terms of the board members for the design review, the sort of our checklist. Do you have that where you can share with everybody so we can get that off our to-do list and then present that to the planning board? And then we'll move forward to also talk about preparation for the design review committee meeting that's on November 5th, how we are going to plan for the standards and guidelines for the multifamily from a design standpoint. And then I know Lisa had presented a letter to the board to consider, and we can talk about that. So let's start with one, which is the terms.
sure. As you had mentioned, Michelle, that's one of the things that that we kind of keep circling back to, or putting it on the to-do list for the planning board in particular, given that they're the appointing authority for the design review committee. And we had talked with town council. This was probably over a year ago. And when we made the changes to the membership on the design review to include 2 architects. So in looking at the suggestion from town council, which was to really start with the person or persons that have been on the board the longest, and to I mean, this isn't concluding anyone's time on the board, but no. So we have to put term limits. This is the only.
I thought I had a lifetime appointment.
So what I came up with, which of course is up for discussion, but what I came up with is I wasn't actually sure if it was Michelle or Tom. I think it's Tom, who probably has been on the board. Probably Michelle and Tom together. But given that Michelle is the planning board appointment, and the planning board appointment serves as chair. So I looked at doing that seat as coming up in April of 2021. And every year the planning board, every spring, the planning board does look at amongst themselves, which planning board member is going to serve on which one of the subcommittees. So that ties in nicely with the planning board doing that every spring. So I propose Michelle, again, it's not the person, it's the position, but Michelle being the chair, the planning board appointee, that it would be April of 2021 for Michelle. And then Tom and Dave are the next 2 senior people, and looking at a term until April 2022. And then Diana and Lisa and obviously Lisa being, I think it was November 2019 for Lisa, October or November, and Diana, you were in 2016, and so your two seats would be April 2023. So it's just a matter of, town council recommends that, every board have a rolling membership. And then when that seat is up, you reapply, to be considered for reappointment from the planning board. So I don't know how that works with everyone or sits with everyone, but like I said, it's been a recommendation of town councils since we changed some of the language in the makeup of the committee that there should also be terms added.
Well, theoretically, it sounds fine, but the practical matter is that there aren't that many architects and landscape designers to draw from. So you've got a limited pool. We're a vanishing breed.
Add graphic designers to that list too. Because I do think that is.
Good luck with it.
Tom, you can reapply.
It's true, but I am getting on,
No, I don't. No.
It really is a lifetime appointment.
Yeah, it feels like it sometimes.
So is that, are people okay with those dates? Like I said, it's just kind of to put a, something down on paper to suggest to the planning board that this be the, how to institute the terms for all the members.
Get a going away party.
No one's leaving. Not on my watch.
I think, Kathy, am I off mute? Yeah. So,
yep.
Yeah, I think this is appropriate. This is good. I'm happy to present it at the next planning board meeting. I think it's fine. It just takes one of those housekeeping issues off our plate, and it says that a check off of this is one of the items that we needed to get done. So.
Doctors without.
And then going forward, it's 3-year terms.
Yeah.
So anytime someone is reappointed, it's for 3 years, which is pretty standard for all the other boards in town.
Yeah. Except for the planning board is nominated or voted on each year.
But true. I mean, there's 3 elected boards right in town.
Okay. So the second item on the agenda is on November 5th, we are moving with Judy Barrett, who is going to come up with a proposal for guidelines for duplexes in town. I would highly recommend that if you have some concerns, if you have some suggestions, if you would like her to add or include anything into her presentation so that we can be productive with this, that you get it off to Kathy so that she can give it to Judy before then. We did have a member of the planning board who had some concerns over height. And so I think Judy will be talking about that as well. So that, when it's brought back to the design review committee, we can make sure that we address everyone's concerns. So sort of a little homework assignment is if you have anything that you'd like to add into that, if you can send that off to to Kathy to get to Judy, that'll just make that meeting so much more productive when we meet with her on November 5th. She's very busy and it's tough to get her, but she's worked with the town so frequently and knows the history and knows some of the issues that we've had to overcome that I think is just a good resource to have and keep. But I'd like to make the meeting as productive as possible. So
does she have anything that she started that we can look at to begin with?
There's a draft.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. She, as you know, this project has been at least a couple of years in fits and starts, and it's mainly been due to Judy's schedule. We ran out of money for the project. That's been taken care of. So she does have a draft. I haven't seen the draft yet. She's just even as of this afternoon, I worked out a schedule with her that I should have it by mid to the end of next week, and the draft, and it'll go out to all of you, of course. And then if people want to, probably better, Michelle, first to see the draft and then comment on the draft and then add any, questions or concerns that you have to it.
Okay.
So then if people, if my calendar, hang on. So then if people could get me, by the end of the last week in October, let's just use Fridays, for example. So hoping that I'll have it before October 23rd, but getting it out to you at the latest by October 23rd, people getting me comments back by the 29th or the 30th, that's Thursday or Friday, the last week of the month. And then Judy would, would be here on the 5th, not necessarily with changes, because I think, you need to all discuss and review that in a public meeting. You can send me, changes, questions, comments, but as far as any discussion about it and Judy doing anything to the draft, we would do that after the 5th, after you meet with her.
So Kathy, over a year ago, I sent her a bunch of photographs and she was going to incorporate that in like a do's and don'ts type section. Are we going to see that? Something like that?
There should be, and she's added photographs also too, she's told me. So I'll just certainly remind her of that, Tom. But yeah, that was one of our assignments from, like you said, like about a year ago, was to send her likes and dislikes as far as any photographs or any examples that people had.
Okay.
So. And then that'll be the only thing on your, or at least that's how I would think you'd want to do the November 5th meeting, that would, that's the agenda item.
Okay. Yeah, so that makes sense. And Judy has really extensive knowledge and experience of working within Massachusetts and a lot of communities that are similar to us. So that if you see something that you've liked, that you've seen in Acton or another community that you think is similar to Northborough, you could easily, include that and send that on to her. And that'll help just make, like I said, the discussion more productive when we meet with her on the 5th.
The problem was that there was no other towns doing design guidelines for residential structures.
Except like Somerville, right?
Yeah. Cambridge probably too, but.
We might not like Somerville and Cambridge for those, no way. Totally different. Same, Arlington, woo, not here. Totally different.
Well, Tom, I was thinking maybe that was the case when we started this, but maybe things have changed since then. So it'd be good to see if she has any feedback for us to see if other communities are addressing the issue. Okay, so we've wrapped up Judy. Everyone's got Judy on the calendar for November 5th at 6 p.m. And then let's segue over to Lisa had emailed us to discuss at the next meeting. An email that she had sent to us. And Kathy, did you want to talk about that? And then the committee members can talk as well. And Lisa can talk as well. So
sure. I just wanted to, I know you, Lisa, I'm just looking, oh, here it is. I know that you, innocently, some of you had started to just have a conversation online, and as you know, we can't do that. So I just wanted to reiterate some of the points that were made when you started to have your discussion online about where the design review committee came from. I'm kind of preaching to the choir a little bit, but given the fact that the design review is an advisory board, I honestly don't think at any point has the permit granting authority board, whether it be the planning board or the zoning board of appeals, I don't think they have ever not incorporated your comments into the decision, whether they made it as part
One
of the
exception.
One exception,
222 West Main Street,
222 West Main.
Tony Abu's duplex project. That's the
Oh,
only time in 20 years our recommendations were not followed.
That's
And we know where
true.
that's going.
That's true.
Court.
Which
So,
one is that one?
well, it's not built. It's heading towards court. It's two proposed duplexes on the
Did we look at
corner
it
of.
already?
I'm sorry, what?
Did we look at that one already?
Yeah, that was probably like a year and a half ago.
It
Year
was the
ago.
duplexes proposed for the corner of Lincoln Street and Route 20, right next to St. Rose of Lima. And we
Oh,
looked at it.
the houses there. Yeah, okay, in the corner.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah,
right. There's
the
3
duplex.
single-family houses there today,
Okay.
but there's 2 more lots that
Yeah.
that are
On the end, George St. Lima.
Yeah.
on West
Okay, I
Main Street.
remember.
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, I just wanted to point out that the all the authority or sort of your explanation of kind of like what lane you're in all comes out of the site plan approval section of the bylaw, which is 7-03-060. So that's the site plan section of the bylaw. And then that talks about, depending on what zoning district it's in, depending on whether there's a groundwater special permit or another kind of special permit, then that depends or that determines whether the site plan goes to the planning board or to the zoning board of appeals. Either way, you're involved if it kicks off the thresholds out of the site plan review section. And then in 2012, which on one hand, I remember walking around town doing this with Judy. So it seems not that long ago, but 2012 is when we came up with the first set of design guidelines for the design review committee. And those are, they're online. If anybody needs a refresher or a new, wants a physical copy of those, by all means, just let me know and we'll, print it and mail it to you. So that's got do's and don'ts for, the commercial property, most of the commercial properties. Not a heck of a lot of, industrial examples because they are hard to come by. But anyway, so there's the design guidelines, which, is kind of your Bible, so to speak. And then within the planning board, they then have a separate set of what are called rules and regulations. And part of those rules and regulations talk about site plan. And it's basically really the all the components of what a site plan should include. And there's reference, of course, made in that section to the design review committee also. And again, it basically outlines, as do the guidelines, what the applicants should be submitting to the design review committee. As we all know, people don't, we ask them to come often, to come early, often and early, and not a lot of the applicants do that, but be that as it may, we can't force them. We certainly, reinforce that over and over again as staff. But so in a nutshell, that's the process for the design review committee. And again, just like the other advisory committees in town, what you present to the boards or send to the boards, are well thought out suggestions. And I stand corrected. So except for once, whether it be the planning board or the zoning board of appeals, your comments have always been incorporated into the decisions. So that's in a nutshell. Again, pretty much everything that you all know, but I just wanted to reiterate that if there was any questions.
Okay. So Lisa, do you want to recap your letter and share your concerns and recommendations?
Well, yes, at the time I wrote that, and I did write, don't respond. I wanted to get it out there because, it would give, after the first meeting.
Lisa, you got to go closer.
All right, can you hear me better now?
We're going to get you a headset.
You're gonna need a headset. That first meeting that we had with 50 Southwest Cutoff, I was getting the message that, well, we're just a design review. The master plan really I wasn't considering, that wasn't important. And the 50-foot buffer, Bob wanted to know where I got my information from because that was all wrong. So I did a little research thinking, well, I tried to do my homework before I make my remarks. And I know we're advisory. I know there's no teeth and they don't have to necessarily do what we ask them to do. But I think that in the past, my experiences have been that sometimes if you ask for something that people are like, well, what's the problem with what we've proposed? I think it bears opening up the door to some other thoughts. And when I first started in 2000, we were going to have a 8-bay gas station and a 24-hour 7-Eleven next door to me. Now we have a nice bank and they do beautiful landscaping. And I think they've been used as an example on the design review suggestions. The next one came along with down the road from me, they were going to put a Jiffy Lube down next to the DPW. And I had gone in and said, I wrote a bylaw that said that's not supposed to be going in. We had a little to do about it. And we actually got a beautiful medical, dental, surgical building with lovely landscaping. And that's also used for the design review book. So, so this piece that's come up with 50 Southwest Cutoff is just so far afield from what we're looking to do that I felt that when I asked the questions, they were just, well, that I hadn't done my homework. And so that's why I was asking about it. I know that there's design review standards and there's, all this stuff to look at. And that's what I wanted to bring up because quite frankly, with what he's come back with, he didn't really listen to a whole lot of stuff, in my opinion. The building turned from white to green, but it's still, it's still so industrial. I mean, he could make the front and the side of that other little building look so much different if he wanted to. And it's a shame that we're taking an area that could be used as a commercial area and a nice building, even if you made a 3-story brick building there, something that would look attractive. And I'm just not, I am not sold at all to see that to be an industrial use in that area. So that was the motivation for me to write and discuss, because you've all been here a lot longer than I have. And sometimes, the new voice coming in to make kind of a squeak helps everybody else to make more of a squeak. And that was my reason for doing that. So I just feel that, we spent $150,000 on a master plan. And I thought that was supposed to be something we were supposed to work towards. And if it isn't, then I don't need to, bring it up again. I just thought that it was important to say. And then I also wanted to talk about, I'd asked Michelle before in some old business. When you go down West Main and you see Hillside and you see 7 Monument Place, and then you see 109 West, there's an awful lot of comments about being unattractive buildings and what happened and why does it continue to happen. And I think we're going to be going right into 50 Southwest doing the same thing. So you have 7 Monument Place. It's a building that's turned around. And now the perfect result is people are putting their umbrellas and their towels and their ghosts and everything else hanging on their balcony because it's the only place they can have their personal items. And it's showing right from the street. So, sometimes, I don't know, how did that building even get put in? Well, before I even got on board, but is it something that we try to accommodate the applicant more so than what we're supposed to do in making the road look better or the streets look better? Maybe you can answer that for me.
Well, back to the issue of the master plan. Three of us I know were on that committee, and we are well acquainted with what the goals are, but we are to be informed by the master plan, but the master plan implementation committees have not been appointed yet. And if any of us are interested in pushing those goals, those are the appropriate committees, not the design review committee. We don't enforce the master plan. It's good that we will know about it and what gets voted on, and we will work with the committees who are trying to implement the various components. But again, as Kathy pointed out, our role is more limited to buildings and landscaping.
So what is the implementation committee really supposed to do? I don't even understand what they're.
Well, that's the next phase in the master plan, is that the implementation committees will be formed for various components of the master plan. So if one is to improve the looks of the downtown, there will be a committee, and they'll either work with other consultants to devise plans or incentives or whatnot. And that committee would be responsible for pushing that particular component. If it's open space, there'll be a committee to push the goals of the master plan for open space. But that's coming. That's not in place yet.
And the existing master plan is not an architectural master plan. There are goals that allude to certain architectural concepts in the master plan, but it's nowhere near the level of specific, I can't even say it, specific characteristics that we're looking at, I think, you know, in our purview. And the master plan is also meant to be something that lays across the entire town. And our job is to look at individual sites. Now we're going to look at things like the view as you go up the road, you know, as we did on 50 tonight, but it's just a different, again, I'm going to go back to scale. Like, we're dealing with a building and how it fits into its immediate context. At least that's how I view it.
I also wanted to talk about, Lisa, so I've been on the board where I was on design review committee when we did the Metro West oral surgeon that you had indicated earlier that another type of use was going to go in there, and some of the other buildings that you talked about along it. What you're going to find along Route 20 is that there's no longer a perfect lot. There's no perfect square lot around Route 20. And a lot of these lots are older. When we did the major rezoning, we tried to draw the property lines to improve them. But in the reference of the one that was just has a mixed use of residential on the second floor and commercial on the first floor, that is a long, narrow lot. And that's why you got the design that you had, which was a little bit of parking in the front, parking in the back, and then the building in the middle. But you will always see, because that lot is a long, narrow lot, is a longer, more narrow building than if you were to get, you know, a perfectly square lot. We've seen applicants come before us over the years that no way could they have their building move forward. And so they had to ask for relief from design review building to reposition the building to make it look more attractive. I do think that there are some situations that maybe you would never, you'd allow for a balcony, but then you would, you know, I don't think the town or even Bob Federico can probably weigh in on this, you know, say what can be out on a balcony. Can someone put an umbrella out there? Probably, yeah. If somebody can throw out their laundry, probably, yeah. But, you know, other than that, you allow no buildings to have no balconies along Main Street so that nobody can see a balcony. You know, sometimes that works against the building, and you're trying to, like Diane talked about earlier, you're trying to break up the mass of the building. And so by breaking up the mass, you might use some railings or decks like that. But so that's what the board has always was done. As far as I see this particular project, what I see is that you have a lot of small contractors. And these are guys that I know in the business because I'm in the business of real estate, so I meet them all the time. You have guys that are electricians, they're plumbers, you know, they work in the field and they need a place to go and put their tools, their office or whatever. They don't need a big building, they need a portion of the building. And my impression of this project was I may have an electrician in here who's going to have all his electrical slides. Maybe his bookkeeper comes in once a week, or maybe I go in my office once a week. They're like little sort of offices, and maybe we've labeled it as a contractor's yard, but there are offices within a building that contractors use. And there's such a high demand for that because they don't need a whole building. Real estate is expensive. And so they're looking to just rent out portions of these buildings to do their business out of. And the planning board this year went to town meeting with sort of a message to the community, which was take all of your stuff off of your property and start using it, these resources out there like these contractors' condos, because we don't want, I mean, the planning board wanted one truck on a property, and I advocated for all these contractors to be allowed 2 trucks on the property. That could be for a landscaper, a truck and a, you know, any type of other, you know, vehicle they might have, whether they're having, what do you call it, Dave? Like you've got a trailer that's attached to it, that's 2 vehicles. So the planning board made that change. I advocated to be a little bit fair to these contractors who there's many of them who work in our community and surrounding communities. And so now they need a place to go. They need a place to put their stuff. I don't know if this is what the applicant is considering, but I thought in his proposal when he discussed with the design review committee that this is what he saw the future of his building would look like as he would rent out to various business owners. So that's why I'm not 100 opposed to the use. I do agree with the other architects on the board that the scale size of a huge metal building like this, maybe that there could be a little bit more detail put in to break it up. So I do, having sat on the master plan committee and on many of the community development committee and other boards, do feel like this use that he's proposing is not far, it's something right that we considered in the master plan. I don't know if Diana and Tom would agree with me, but I think this use is sort of something that comes up as we were thinking about the next 20 years of town of Northborough. Would people would these contractors need this type of use and building to go to, and where would you put it?
Well, there are some contractor yards and storage units in Northborough already. I designed one on Otis Street a few years back. It's not the use I'm opposed to, it's the container. I mean, it's so utilitarian that it's appalling.
Right.
And that's the problem. There's just no thought, like Dave's pointed out, the landscaping, there's no thought put into it. The building, there's no thought put into it. It's just the most, it's the least expensive utilitarian structure you can imagine. But it doesn't have to be that way because there are many companies out there like MGCI that have panelized metal building systems that are much more attractive than this. This is the bottom of the barrel of what's available. And that's my main opposition. Tim has done some very attractive buildings on West Main Street, but this is a new low for him, unfortunately.
And I agree. And I even said that tonight too. And in going to your point, Tom, I met someone, was it last weekend? I had a meet on Friday night, and I went into the restaurant, and the front of the restaurant, I went to it and walked in. I was like, hey, this is a nice restaurant. On my way out of the restaurant, turned the facade, and I'm walking up, and I'm like, oh my God. And I knocked on the side of the building. It was a metal building from the front. I thought it was a nice restaurant. Totally faked me out. Granted, it was dusk when, or evening when I went in, but it can be done so much better where you know, me out. So it can be done so much better. That, as you said, it was bottom of the bottom.
There's a DPW building on Route 135 over the Westboro to Hopkinton line.
Yep.
Metal building.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Very attractive.
Yep.
Look at the salt storage buildings along the New Jersey Turnpike. Metal buildings. Very attractive.
Yep.
But you know, you go to Prig and Steel, you're not going to get any architecture. You're just going to get metal panels.
Right.
So that's where we
I
are.
clearly thought that message got across to the applicant, who is going to be coming back and hopefully proposing something different to us in 2 weeks. I think, you know, Contractor's Yard has, you know, maybe the planning board needs to go back and break up Contractor's Yard and go to town meeting this year with maybe a different definition to allow some of this diversity that we're looking for these small business owners. But unfortunately right now, Bob, I think you probably could agree that most of these guys fall under Contractor's Yard, right? Yep. And that if they are a small business owner or an electrician, plumber, these guys are looking just for some type of housing to get along that are being built along these corridors, maybe we need to go and look at the definition and the zoning and go to town meeting for. But I do think out of the master plan that moving forward, that this was clearly a diversity in business use that is anticipated and should be allowed somewhere.
It is allowed in other zones.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, if I could find a piece of property, honestly, in like the industrial area down, what was that, Cedar Hill, right in that area, I'd buy it and develop it and do the same thing in a heartbeat. You know, just to do that, because the demand is there. It's huge.
And I agree, it's where the location is. I mean, down in the industrial areas is fine, but when you stick it into a business west residential, there should be some pushback. And whether or not, I don't know that I agree with having contractors' yards mingled in with businesses and residential, because they need a place to go. We have a lot of area that they could actually use. Otis Street has some areas down there that you could add another one to, but it's just, I just don't like it here. I think it's too much.
Okay, so Lisa, you've explained your letter. We sort of all understand the perimeters now of the design review committee, and certainly we'll bring this back to the planning board to have a discussion. And like I said, the master plan just completed just a few months ago. The implementation committee is starting up, and there certainly will be a lot of discussion on the planning board could take out of this and decide on some more zoning, how to improve the zoning for it. Does anyone else have any comments? Nope. Okay, so at this point, we'll probably end the meeting and we'll see you guys on October 29th at 6 p.m. Back with the same applicant. And then again, just mark your calendars, 6 p.m. on November 5th. All right?
All right.
Good. Have a nice week. Bye.
Don't
Night,
forget,
everyone.
vote.
Thanks,
Good night, all.
John.
Welcome.
Thank you.